Winter 2025 marks a turning point in the Ukrainian conflict. For weeks, Moscow has intensified its strikes against Ukraine's energy infrastructure, plunging millions of civilians into cold and darkness. But on the night of January 25th, Kyiv responded, and its response was devastating. What you're about to discover in this video will show how Ukraine shifted from being a victim to becoming an offensive actor, striking directly inside Russian territory with surgical precision. More than 50 explosions rocked Belgorod, a strategic Russian city. Hundreds of thousands of people were left without electricity or heating. Stay until the end to understand how this attack changes the game and why Moscow can no longer ignore Volodymyr Zelensky's warnings. Since the start of winter, the Kremlin has adopted a clear strategy: destroy Ukraine's energy infrastructure to break civilian morale. Massive waves of drones and missiles regularly rain down on Ukrainian cities, targeting power plants, transformers, and heating networks. On January 9th, a first major strike hit the energy grid. Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson, made Moscow's intentions clear: pressure Kyiv into negotiations. In his own words, the situation is deteriorating day by day for the Ukrainian government, and its room for maneuver is shrinking. On January 20th, Moscow launched one of its largest attacks. Kyiv itself was targeted by ballistic missiles, triggering massive explosions across the capital. The toll was heavy: 18 ballistic missiles, 15 cruise missiles, 1 Zircon missile, and 339 attack drones. The total value of this arsenal exceeded $131 million. The objectives were clear: cut electricity, eliminate heating, and terrorize civilians. Entire neighborhoods in Kyiv were left without water or power. Fires broke out, but Ukraine held firm. Thanks to its air defense systems, most of the projectiles were intercepted. The Russian plan worked partially, but not as intended. On January 24th, as Ukrainian, Russian, and American diplomats met in Abu Dhabi to discuss a potential ceasefire, Moscow struck again. It was a brutal message: negotiations mean nothing as long as missiles keep falling. Air raid sirens once again wailed in Kyiv. New explosions shook the capital. This time, the damage was even worse. More than 800,000 Kyiv residents were left without stable access to electricity. Heating was cut in 6,000 buildings. 88,000 households lost power. Emergency crews worked around the clock to restore electricity, but the situation became critical. The Ukrainian winter is unforgiving, with temperatures plunging well below freezing. For the elderly, children, and the most vulnerable, every night became a fight for survival. A European diplomat said Moscow was sending a message written in fire. This is Vladimir Putin's method of negotiation: more destruction, more suffering, until the opponent gives in. But Kyiv would not give in, and the response was swift. Keep watching, because what comes next changes the dynamics of this war. There is a reason Russian strikes are so effective against Ukraine's infrastructure, and that reason dates back to the Soviet era. As the BBC points out, Soviet-era urban planning works against Ukraine today. Large cities like Kyiv rely heavily on centralized heating systems. Water is heated at thermal plants on the outskirts of cities and then distributed to thousands of apartments through radiator networks. This system, widespread across former Soviet states, has one major flaw: hit just a few facilities and tens of thousands of people lose heating. Generators and batteries can temporarily compensate for power outages, but nothing can replace central heating once the plants are destroyed. That's exactly what Moscow is exploiting. By targeting these facilities, the Kremlin knows it can inflict maximum suffering with minimal strikes. But Putin underestimated one crucial factor: the resilience of the Ukrainian people. Valentina Vertaletska, a deputy director interviewed by The Guardian, put it plainly: the Russians want to break us. They think we'll take to the streets and protest, but that won't happen. And Volodymyr Zelensky had warned them. Last September, he issued a clear message: if they threaten Kyiv with a blackout, then Moscow will face a blackout. The Ukrainian president added, Russia must understand that civilized countries never strike first, but that doesn't mean they are weak. On January 25th, Ukraine proved it was not weak. Stay with me, the next part is explosive. During the night of January 25th, Ukraine struck the target Belgorod, a strategic Russian region near the Ukrainian border. Belgorod was no random choice. Since the start of the conflict in February 2022, the region has served as a rear base for Russian operations. It is a major logistics hub. Equipment, troops, and ammunition all pass through Belgorod before being deployed to the Ukrainian front. For years, Moscow believed the region was safe. Ukraine, they thought, lacked the capability to strike deep inside Russian territory. In 2025, that certainty collapsed. The January 25th attack was described by local authorities as the most massive Belgorod has experienced since the confrontation began. At least 50 explosions shook the city. Russian air defenses failed to intercept the projectiles. The main target was the Belgorod thermal power plant on Pivnichno-Donetska Street. This facility supplies more than 36% of the city's heating needs, around 115,000 residents. The strikes were precise, devastating, and impossible to hide. Videos quickly spread on social media, showing massive explosions lighting up the night sky. Car alarms blared across the city. Missile debris littered the streets. A member of Russian forces filmed the remains of a projectile, likely a HIMARS missile. Regional Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov confirmed the scale of the damage. Several districts lost electricity and water. A utility building caught fire, but no civilian casualties were reported. Proof that Ukraine has mastered precision strikes. As always, Moscow tried to downplay the attack. Gladkov used the usual excuse. Falling debris caused a fire. It's become a running joke. Ukrainian debris has surgical accuracy. But there's more. The attack didn't stop at the power plant. In the hours that followed, Gladkov released another statement. The damage was far more extensive than initially reported. Several localities in the Belgorod region were hit: Borisov, Valuisky, Volokhonovsky, Gryvoron, and Krasnoyarsk. Homes, vehicles, and infrastructure were damaged. Some areas lost gas supply. This confirms one thing: Ukraine hit exactly what it intended to hit. If entire areas were left without gas, it's because the Belgorod thermal plant was knocked out of service. The pro-Ukrainian Telegram channel Astra shared images of the attack, showing multiple successive strikes on the plant. Commentary accompanying the videos mentions at least 50 explosions across the city, one of the most powerful attacks Belgorod has ever seen. And here's the detail that changes everything. Ukraine made no official comment on the strike, no triumphant statement, no public claim, just silence, a silence that speaks volumes. Kyiv let the facts speak for themselves. If Moscow proved on January 24th that peace talks were meaningless, Ukraine showed it is ready to impose peace by force. But how did Ukraine pull off such a strike? Keep watching. The weapon used: the HIMARS system supplied by the United States. HIMARS, High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, is a multiple rocket launcher mounted on an armored vehicle. It can fire long-range missiles with remarkable precision. Belgorod, being a border region, is well within its range. The Block 1A missiles used by HIMARS can strike targets up to 300 kilometers away. Each missile releases a payload of 300 submunitions via a single-burst warhead. It's a formidable weapon, and Ukraine knows how to use it. But there's another possibility. HIMARS can also fire ATACMS missiles, which are even more powerful and have a longer range. If Ukraine used ATACMS on January 25th, that would mean the United States approved strikes on Russian territory. Washington had implemented a strict approval mechanism in spring 2024, severely limiting Ukraine's use of ATACMS, but a strike in November suggested that authorization had been granted again. It's possible the U.S. gave the green light once more. For now, Ukraine confirms nothing. But the facts speak for themselves, and now here's Moscow's reaction. You won't believe it. As expected, Moscow tried to minimize the attack. The TASS news agency relayed statements from Russia's Ministry of Defense, and guess what? According to them, most, if not all, Ukrainian projectiles were destroyed mid-air. The ministry claimed it shot down 2 guided aerial bombs, 31 U.S.-made HIMARS rockets, and 68 fixed-wing drones. They added that Ukraine lost 1,335 soldiers in what they call the Special Military Operations Zone. But there's a problem. These numbers make no sense. TASS also reported that the Russian Defense Ministry claims to have destroyed 670 Ukrainian aircraft and 283 helicopters since the start of the conflict. Ukraine only had 116 fighter jets before the February 2022 invasion, and it certainly hasn't received more than 550 since. Skeptics will say Moscow slightly exaggerates its figures slightly. It's also strange that Russia suddenly claims to be inflicting daily losses on Ukraine equal to what it suffers itself. A coincidence, no doubt. But beyond propaganda, the Belgorod attack sends a powerful message, one that goes far beyond simple retaliation. Stay with me. As News Sky explained last October, Belgorod is the Achilles heel of the Russian Federation. The region shares a 40-kilometer border with Ukraine. All equipment and troop rotations and supplies destined for the Ukrainian regions of Luhansk and Kharkiv pass through Belgorod. It is one of Moscow's most important logistics hubs supporting its military operations. Traditionally, a region like Belgorod would be considered part of Russia's deep rear, simply because it lies within Russian territory. But its proximity to Ukraine changes everything. Today, Ukraine has missiles and drones capable of striking almost anywhere in this region. That means every strike on Belgorod can hit legitimate military targets, weapons depots, command centers, and energy infrastructure powering the front. More importantly, these strikes shake the rear of the Russian army, as News Sky puts it. Putin wants Ukrainian civilians to know they are not safe. Ukraine is telling Putin that the residents of Belgorod and the soldiers who depend on the region aren't safe either. And now Moscow is trying to respond, but its response is pathetic. Let me explain. On January 25th, United 24 reported that Russia deployed a so-called HIMARS killer on the battlefield. Its name? Sarma. This multiple rocket launcher system is supposed to be Russia's answer to HIMARS, offering similar capabilities to Moscow's army. But there's a major problem. Russia's closest equivalent to HIMARS appears to be based on a 19-year-old prototype, the 9A524, This system never entered production, and it's not even clear whether Sarma can hit a target, let alone with the devastating precision of American HIMARS. Ukraine is watching closely to see whether this new system can deliver on its promises. For now, HIMARS' superiority remains unquestioned, and while Moscow deploys untested weapons, Belgorod continues to burn. Putin should have listened to Zelensky's warning back in September, but now it's too late. There's a strong chance the January 25th attack was made possible by a sabotage campaign carried out throughout 2024. Ukraine's security service Alpha unit conducted a series of devastating strikes against Russian air defenses. In 2024 alone, this elite unit inflicted $4 billion in damage on Moscow's defense systems. These strikes created secure aerial corridors for Ukrainian drones and missiles. By weakening Russian air defenses, Alpha unit paved the way for attacks like the one on Belgorod. This was a methodical, long-term campaign, proof that Ukraine isn't just reacting. It's preparing the ground, anticipating and planning. And on January 25th, all those efforts paid off. Belgorod burned. Thousands of people were left without heating or electricity, and Moscow could do nothing to stop it. What we've just witnessed is a turning point in this conflict. For weeks, Russia tried to break Ukraine by targeting its energy infrastructure. Putin believed Ukrainian civilians would crack under the pressure of cold and darkness. He was wrong. Ukraine struck back. It hit Belgorod with surgical precision. It showed Moscow that no one is safe, and it proved it has the capabilities and the determination to impose its terms. Putin should have listened to Zelensky. But now it's too late. Belgorod is burning, and this is only the beginning. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any coverage of this conflict, and let me know in the comments what you think about Ukraine's response. See you soon for the next videos.